enzyme inhibitor. به نام خدا. enzyme inhibitor. Change of enzyme reaction, inhibition or enhance, has a big importance also in vivo as this make it possible to regulate metabolic pathway. Many pathway product inhibit themselves synthesis. Many pathway product inhibit themselves synthesis. نمیذارن دیگه سنتز بشن، میگن بس ما دیگه تولید شدیم. While enhance of other substances induce its self-catabolism. In the following, we consider enzyme inhibition an important discipline of enzyme regulation. Inhibitors are substance-reducing enzyme. Inhibitors are substances reducing enzyme activity within certain circumstances. Depending on how the inhibitor affects the kinetical graph of the reaction, it's called competitive, non-competitive, or uncompetitive. بیا پایین مادر. بیا اینجا مزاحم وقت خاله نشو. بیا پایین. بدو پایین. بدو. To simplify the matter, we introduce the mechanism of enzyme inhibition for one substrate reaction. The competitive. In the competitive inhibition, if the inhibitor binds to a free enzyme composing an enzyme inhibitor complex, then the inhibition is competitive. Its kinetical graph is shown below. اینا که رفته بالا they increase the slope because the inhibitor concentration is increased. As much as inhibitor concentration increase, the slope of the graph increase. Now, the enzyme plus substrate produce enzyme substrate complex and the product and enzyme separately. The inhibitor directly come to the enzyme. This is a competitive inhibition. Under this circumstance, Michael-Menten constant increase. Why? You see, it's coming down. The minus 1 over Km decrease. It means Km increase. In competitive inhibition, Km increase. But Vmax doesn't change. Why? Because this dot, this intercept is minus 1 over K. Because this dot is a minus 1 over Vmax. As you see, the dot is... چیه مامان؟ عزیزم بیا لای کنه. بیا من تو رو از دست اون قول بی شاخادامون که بیرون نجات بدم. تیبی تو هم بیا. تیبی رو لطفا بغل کنین بذارینشون جلو اون صندلی. ای بابا صندلی کم داریم. صندلی نداریم دیگه ما. صندلی هر 4 تاش الان پره. عزیزم بذارین گوش بدیم. You see, the dot minus 1 over Vmax is constant. It means in the competitive inhibition, Vmax doesn't change, but Km increase. This is very important in the written exam. What's happened on the competitive inhibition? The Vmax constant doesn't change, but the Km increase. Why Km increase? Because minus 1 over Km decrease. TB. Yeah. Under these circumstances, a Michael-Menten constant increase, but Vmax doesn't change. If enzyme inhibitor complex is completely unable to catalyze, the inhibitor is called dead-end inhibitor. If the enzyme inhibitor complex is completely unable to catalyze, is called dead-end inhibitor. Inhibition via substrate analog is, for example, succinate dehydrogenase inhibition by oxaloacetate and malonate. What is the job of succinate dehydrogenase?
To succinate to the fumarate?
Succinate dehydrogenase. Yes. Exactly. The succinate produce FADH2 and produce fumarate. It says if we inhibit this enzyme by oxaloacetate or malonate. Why? Because oxaloacetate and malonate are the end product of citric acid cycle. They can come back and say succinate, please, that's enough. Don't produce fumarate again, because the fumarate is a substrate of malonate and malonate is a substrate of oxaloacetate. Uncompetitive inhibition. The inhibitor doesn't react with free enzyme. The inhibitor doesn't react with free enzyme but does with enzyme substrate. Complex enzyme substrate plus inhibitor produce ESI, like in the case of pyruvate dehydrogenase inhibition by acetaldehyde. The inhibitor doesn't react with free enzyme but does with the enzyme substrate complex, like in the case of pyruvate dehydrogenase inhibition. What is the job of pyruvate dehydrogenase? If the pyruvate will be dehydrogenased by the PDC, pyruvate dehydrogenase complex, pyruvate could produce acetyl-CoA. And this complex has a three enzyme, FADH2, lipoate, and thiamine pyrophosphate, TPP.
Complex 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, it said the pyruvate dehydrogenase complex inhibition by acetaldehyde. For this type, the uncompetitive inhibition happens. Both Michael-Menten and Vmax decrease. Although on a double reciprocal plot, the slope of the lines doesn't change. See? This is a
Vmax زیاد میشه.
No. You see, 1 minus 1 over Vmax increase. It means the Vmax decrease. Minus 1 over, not the minus, 1 over Vmax increase, it means the Vmax decrease, and in this case, the minus 1 over Km, you see, increase, it means the Km decrease. Km and Vmax both decrease. Okay? And for the uncompetitive, the inhibitor binds to the ES, like this shape. For example, acetaldehyde by uncompetitive inhibition on pyruvate dehydrogenase complex. The non-competitive, the inhibitor react both the free enzyme E and the enzyme substrate complex ES. Kinetical plot can be diverse. In some cases, the Km doesn't change and Vmax decrease, graph on the left, while in other cases, both Vmax and Km change. It means mixed type inhibition, graph on the right. You see, we have a two type of the non-competitive. You see, both react with free enzyme and enzyme substrate complex. Kinetical plot can be diverse. In some cases, Km doesn't change and just Vmax decrease, because 1 over Vmax increase, it means just Vmax decrease, but the Km is constant, and maybe the Km increase, Vmax decrease. You see? While in other case, both Vmax and Km change. It means the Km now increase because 1 minus 1 over Km decrease, Km increase, and Vmax decrease. This is very common type of inhibition. Many dehydrogenases share this inhibition characteristic. Why? I want to ask you, not you. Why this type of inhibition is non-competitive? And why the other name is mixed? Because we have two graphs. Maybe the Km is constant, maybe the Km is increased. But in both cases, the Vmax decrease. Why? Because we inhibit. When you inhibit, you shouldn't expect that your maximum velocity increase. The maximum velocity for sure should be decreased. Because you inhibit it, yeah?
Yeah.
Now, in the mixed inhibition, inhibitor, both of them happens. Inhibition constant, Ki, is used to characteristic enzyme inhibition. This expresses the affinity of the inhibitor to the enzyme. Therefore, inhibitors with low Ki bonds strongly to the enzyme, while those with high Ki bonds weaker. For many inhibition, the slope is proportional to the inhibitor concentration, and slope plotted against inhibitor concentration. The Ki can be determined as shown below. این چیه؟ شیبای مختلف رو بر اساس غلظت اینهیبیشن زده. بعد این خط ادامه داده اون طرف X اینترسپت رو پیدا کرده، گفته ایشون میشه ماینوس Ka، قدر مطلقش رو میگیره، میشه انزایم، میشه inhibition constant. Again, to find inhibition constant, we need express affinity of the inhibitor to the enzyme. Therefore, inhibitors with low Ki bonds strongly to the enzyme, while those with high Ki bonds weaker. For many inhibition, the slope is proportional. The slope is proportional to the inhibitor's concentration, هرچه کانسنتریشن اینهیبیتور بیشتر شیب بیشتر، چون اینجوری گراف پیش میرفت دیگه، اینجوری بود، شیب بیشتر. For the kinetical analysis of enzyme inhibition, we determine the substrate dependency of the reaction rate in the presence of certain inhibitor. For the kinetical analysis of enzyme inhibition, we determine the substrate dependency of the reaction rate in the presence of certain inhibitors. During the lab, we show the inhibition of alkaline phosphatase by phosphate ion and eta. Phosphate ion is این داستانش چی بود؟ فسفاتیز ها من نه موقع نتونستم من برای شما توضیح بدم، از میخوام نمیدونم دقیقاً داستان چه قراره. Phosphate ion product of the reaction capable of binding to the free enzyme, thus comparing with para-nitrophenyl phosphate. Therefore this is a competitive type inhibition. It's well known that the alkaline phosphatase require magnesium ion. alkaline phosphatase احتیاج به مگنزیوم داره. Eta inhibit the enzyme via distraction of magnesium, and because it decreases both free enzyme and enzyme substrate complex concentration, the type of inhibition is non-competitive. میگه که فسفاتیز احتیاج به مگنزیوم داره. اتا میاد با مگنزیوم ها واکنش میده. مگنزیوم کم میشه، پس فسفاتیز نمیتونه کار بکنه. پس یه جورایی مگنزیوم هم به انزایم احتیاج داره، بعد اتا با مگنزیوم وان میشه و خلاصه میشه نان کامپتیتیو، یعنی میکس.
میکس الان
نان یعنی میکس. درسته هم میگم دیگه. آره دیگه، میکس نانه. یه آن داریم یه نان، جفتش منفی سازه، منتها نان یعنی میکس، آن یعنی آن. خب تموم شد، میریم پی دی اف بعد.